Lucy's key rattled in the lock. 2 a.m. The hour when the world is at its quietest, and every sound seems amplified. She pushed the door open, the creak echoing through the empty hallway. Exhaustion tugged at her eyelids, but beneath it, a prickle of unease. It was a feeling she couldn't quite shake off, a sense that something was off, lurking just beyond her perception. Her apartment seemed to hum, a discordant note in the usual silence. The walls, which once felt like a sanctuary, now seemed to close in on her, the shadows deeper and more menacing. She flicked on the lights, the familiar space suddenly foreign. The furniture cast long, eerie shadows, and the once cozy corners now seemed to hide secrets. Her gaze snagged on the antique mirror, a family heirloom, its ornate frame gleaming dully in the dim light. It had always been a comforting presence, but tonight it felt like it was watching her.
The air felt thick, heavy. It was as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Lucy shook off the feeling. Nerves, just nerves. She tried to convince herself that it was all in her head, a product of her overactive imagination. She'd had too much coffee, that was all. The caffeine was playing tricks on her mind, making her see things that weren't there. Still, she found herself avoiding the mirror's gaze as she moved through the room. It was as if she was afraid of what she might see in its depths, a reflection of her own fears and anxieties. Suddenly, a faint noise broke the silence, a whispering sound that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Her heart pounded in her chest as she strained to listen. With trembling hands, she approached the mirror, her reflection distorted and twisted. The air grew colder, and she could see her breath fogging up the glass. Just as she reached out to touch the mirror, a shadowy figure appeared behind her reflection. She recoiled in terror, stumbling backward, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Panic surged through her veins as she fled the room, the hallway stretching out before her like a dark, endless tunnel. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, as if the very walls were closing in on her. She locked herself in her bedroom, heart racing, and hid under the bed. The whispers turned into a cacophony of voices, each one more terrifying than the last, as the darkness closed in around her.
A floorboard creaked.
Lucy froze, listening. Silence, thick and absolute. Then a whisper, soft and indistinct, from the direction of the mirror. Her breath hitched.
Hello?
Her voice echoed in the stillness, unanswered. She inched closer to the mirror, her heart thudding against her ribs. The whisper came again, a sibilant murmur that sent shivers down her spine. It seemed to emanate from the mirror itself, a voice trapped behind its glassy surface. Lucy's hand trembled as she reached out, her fingers hovering just shy of the cold glass. She could feel the chill emanating from the surface, a coldness that seemed to seep into her bones. Her breath hitched as she hesitated, the air around her growing thick with an unspoken dread. Her reflection stared back, but something was wrong. The face in the mirror was hers, yet it seemed twisted, almost as if it were a cruel parody of her own. The eyes, usually warm and inviting, now held a sinister gleam, and the smile that played on her lips was anything but friendly. The image wavered, her reflected eyes flickering with an unnatural light. It was as if the mirror held a life of its own, a malevolent force that sought to break free. The light in her eyes grew brighter, more intense, casting eerie shadows that danced across the room.
Fear, sharp and cold, shot through her. It was a primal fear, one that gripped her heart and refused to let go. She could feel her pulse quicken, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps as she tried to make sense of the horror before her.
The whisper grew louder, morphing into a guttural rasp that seemed to claw its way out of the mirror. It was a sound that chilled her to the core, a voice that seemed to come from the depths of her darkest nightmares. The shadows in the mirror twisted and writhed, as if alive, adding to the growing sense of dread. The reflection's lips moved, mimicking the words, but no sound came from its painted mouth. It was a silent scream, a cry for help that went unheard. The reflection seemed to mock her, its eyes filled with a malevolent glee as it continued to move its lips in a grotesque parody of speech. Lucy stumbled back, a gasp escaping her lips. She could feel the weight of the mirror's gaze upon her, a presence that seemed to reach out and pull her in. Desperation clawed at her mind as she tried to break free from the nightmare that had become her reality. Behind her reflection, a shape coalesced in the mirror's depths. A shadowy figure, tall and skeletal, its edges blurring into the darkness that seemed to pool within the glass. Its eyes, two burning embers, fixed on Lucy with chilling intensity.
Panic seized her. This was madness, impossible.
But the rasping voice, the figure's malevolent gaze held her captive. She tried to scream, but terror choked the sound. Her legs felt like lead, her body rooted to the spot. The mirror's surface rippled like water, distorting the reflection into something unrecognizable. It was as if the very fabric of reality was being twisted and turned, creating an unsettling, almost hypnotic effect.
What? What is happening? This can't be real. Am I dreaming? Lucy's voice trembled, her mind racing to make sense of the impossible scene unfolding before her eyes.
Lucy's reflection reached out, its hand passing through the glass as if it were smoke. The sight was both mesmerizing and terrifying. A ghostly apparition that defied all logic.
"You can't escape." The words echoed in her mind, a chilling reminder of her helplessness.
Long, skeletal fingers wrapped around her wrist, their touch icy cold. It felt like death itself had reached out to claim her, sending shivers down her spine.
No! Lucy screamed, her voice raw with terror. She pulled with all her might, but the grip was unyielding.
The word tore from her throat, a strangled cry. She thrashed against the grip, but the fingers held fast, their strength inhuman. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat a desperate plea for escape.
"Welcome to my world." The voice was a sinister whisper, dripping with malice and dark intent.
The shadowy figure behind the glass grinned, a grotesque distortion of a smile, and Lucy felt a pull, a sickening lurch in her stomach. It was as if the very essence of her being was being drawn into the mirror, into a world of nightmares and shadows.
She dug her heels into the floor, her body resisting the inexorable pull of the mirror. Panic surged through her, hot and desperate. Her fingers scrabbled at the mirror's frame, finding no purchase on its smooth surface. "Help!" she screamed, her voice raw with terror. But her words were swallowed by the oppressive silence of the apartment. The shadowy figure advanced, its burning eyes boring into hers, and Lucy knew with a horrifying certainty that she was losing.
The pull intensified, dragging her closer to the mirror's surface. Her face pressed against the cold glass, the rasping voice now a deafening roar in her ears.
Her reflection grinned, its teeth sharp and pointed, its eyes burning with triumphant malice.
Then with a sickening lurch, she was pulled through. The world dissolved into a dizzying swirl of darkness and cold. The rasping voice echoed all around her, and the last vestiges of hope withered and died. Silence descended upon the apartment once more. The mirror hung on the wall, its surface still and reflective. The shadowy figure was gone, the rasping voice silent.
Only Lucy's reflection remained, staring out with an eerie calmness. It adjusted its hair, a lock that had come loose during the struggle. A slow, satisfied smile spread across its lips, a chilling imitation of Lucy's own. The reflection turned, glancing around the apartment with a newfound sense of ownership.
The apartment was silent, undisturbed. The only evidence of the night's horror was the lingering chill in the air and the unsettling feeling that something was amiss. But no one was there to notice. No one except the figure now trapped within the mirror's depths, forever imprisoned behind the glass. The apartment, once Lucy's sanctuary, now belonged to her reflection, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface.